Around the late 18th century, yoga in the Indian subcontinent was a lost art. It was almost on the brink of extinction. It's fair to say that yoga was dying a slow death. As BKS Iyengar mentions in the Breath of the Gods documentary, practicing yoga during that time was seen as a sign of eccentricity or even mental instability. He said if you did yoga, you were half cracked or half crooked.
There was a feeling that those who embrace yoga, particularly in the early days, they may be mentally disturbed, or they must have quarreled with their parents, or so on and so forth.
The yogis, particularly the wandering ascetics, were often viewed as outcasts of society, rare figures who inspired more fear than reverence. If one encountered a yogi, it was customary to offer food or donation, but this wasn't done out of respect, it was done so you wouldn't get cursed. These wandering yogis were enigmatic, engaging in strange and sometimes terrifying acts, eating glass, enduring extreme conditions, and sitting in deep trances whilst chanting. These yogis were more feared than admired. Then, in the late 19th century, things took a dramatic turn. Around 1893, the great Swami Vivekananda was invited to the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago, where he introduced yoga and Indian philosophy to the Western world. His famous opening words were, "Sisters and Brothers of America." This earned Vivekananda a standing ovation. In his subsequent speeches, Vivekananda eloquently described the religions and the spiritual practices of India, speaking extensively on Vedanta and, importantly for us, reintroducing a lost text, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. This renewed interest both in India and abroad. Indian scholars and British academics alike took notice, seeking to translate and understand these ancient texts. Vivekananda became a trailblazer. He was determined to show that India was not just a land of colonized subjects, but a civilization refined by its rich spiritual traditions. Fast forward to the early 1940s, and yoga, although revived in a spiritual sense, was still struggling to gain recognition for its physical aspects. While its philosophical depth intrigued many, the physical practice was still seen as a domain of wandering ascetics associated with fakirs, contortionists, and prolonged meditation in the lotus pose. Enter the great Krishnamacharya, a visionary who understood that for yoga to survive, it needed to evolve. Seeking funding for his Yogashala, Krishnamacharya introduced dynamic, physically engaging elements into the practice. Krishnamacharya's new yoga was inspired by mythology, gymnastics, and even traditional Indian wrestling. He developed a more structured and accessible approach to physical yoga. He introduced asanas such as Warrior 1, Warrior 2, Warrior 3, all of which up until that point had never been part of traditional yoga practices. Yoga now was no longer confined to the realm of mystics. It was becoming a living, breathing discipline relevant to the modern world. The great Krishnamacharya's influence birthed two of the most significant modern yoga lineages. His students, Pattabhi Jois and BKS Iyengar, each took yoga in their own distinct directions. Pattabhi Jois remained somewhat faithful to his guru's teachings, developing a fast-paced and physically demanding Ashtanga yoga practice, which incorporated structured sequences and the now famous sun salutations. BKS Iyengar, on the other hand, took a different route. He refined a style focused on alignment and accessibility, using props and precise techniques to make yoga more available to a wider audience. Both men honored their guru and teacher by not rigidly copying them, but by being inspired by them. Both men adapted the yoga that was taught to them by their guru in a way that resonated with them and in a way that was more practical for their students. Both men understood that their guru Krishnamacharya himself was a revolutionary, and they just continued that spirit moving forward. The whole point of this very brief journey through yoga's history is for us yoga students to understand that everything that we practice today exists because teachers before us were brave enough to follow their hearts. Whether you practice the refined alignment of Iyengar yoga, the energetic practice and breathing of Pattabhi Jois's Ashtanga yoga, or even the meditative stillness of Yin yoga, you are benefiting from the courage and vision of those who dared to innovate. True yoga practice is not about blind obedience to tradition. It's about honoring the fundamental yoga principle of self-discovery. And yet in modern times, yoga teachers worldwide often religiously adhere to a single method, claiming that this is the way of our guru. Ironically, the greatest tribute to one's teacher and guru is not to imitate them, but to embody their spirit of curiosity and innovation. The best way to honor a yoga guru or a yoga tradition is really not through blind repetition, but just by daring to be yourself, by having the confidence to just rebel a little. Yoga is a living, evolving tradition, and if it feels right in your heart, if it feels right to evolve and change the way you teach because you're prioritizing your students, then you really are honoring the most profound yoga principle of all, which is listening to your own heart and trusting your own reasoning. The entire teachings of Swami Vivekananda are summarized by being brave. Be brave and be inspired. Be inspired by the great yoga teachers of the past, but do not become a mere copy. Real yoga, true yoga, is about evolution and evolving. It's not about mimicry. And the yoga world is ironic. Yoga is about self-discovery. Yoga is a personal practice. It's a personal journey. And what we really want is to be inspired again by teachers from the past and not lose our sense of identity, lose who we are by blindly just following what everyone else has done before. Yoga has evolved since the days of Swami Vivekananda, and we as teachers should learn how to evolve too.